10 mind-blowing facts about Shakespeare. Anyone and everyone who's been through school has heard of Shakespeare. Whether you like his work or not, the man's life was anything but boring. 10. He had a kid named HamNET. Shakespeare's only son was named HamNET. Yes, you heard that right, HamNET. Just like the name of his masterpiece, some historians think that the connection is not just a coincidence, and that Shakespeare drew on his relationship with Hamlet to write Hamlet. Unfortunately, his son Hamlet died when he was only 11 years old. At number 9, Shakespeare has been translated into 80 languages, including Klingon. If Shakespeare knew people would still be enjoying his work 400 years after his death, he would be amazed. Shakespeare loved languages and wrote a whole scene of French for the play Henry V, but even he could never have imagined his work would be translated into 80 languages, including Klingon. In 2000, Star Trek fans produced a translation of Hamlet in Klingon in an effort to restore Shakespeare to its original language. Unsurprisingly, most people prefer the Earthling version, and the Klingon Hamlet is rarely, if ever, performed. Number 8. Shakespeare's father was paid to drink beer. Shakespeare's father was elected the borough Alcester, which means his job was to check out all the bread and malt liquors until he was convinced they were okay. Number 7. Shakespeare loves himself some birds. In his plays, he refers to birds over 600 times. Considering he wrote at least 37 plays, that's an average of 16 birds a play. Birds are a great metaphor, but they can be too much of a good thing. Shakespeare loves birds would eventually lead to an ecological disaster, but more on that later. Number 6. Shakespeare wasn't a law-abiding citizen. Shakespeare evaded taxes and was threatened with jail time but never served a single day. This is just like politicians and businessmen of our time. Some things never change. He also stockpiled food during shortages and sold it at high prices, which was certainly illegal even 400 years ago. 5. The character Emilia in Othello may have been based on a real-life lover. It's well known that Shakespeare's love affairs was rather colourful, to say the least. Henry Wriothesley, the 3rd Earl of Southampton, a brothel keeper called Lucy Morgan, and the courtier who went by the familiar name of Emilia Lanier. Emilia was a shadowy figure who inspired some of his most passionate sonnets. Lanier was a poet who wrote some of the earliest feminist works. Her works included Eve's Apology in Defense of Women. Some scholars believe that Shakespeare had Lanier in mind when he wrote the character Emilia in Othello. Indeed, Emilia has some of the most feminist lines in the whole of Shakespeare, such as, "Let husbands know their wives sense like them, they see and smell, and their palate both for sweet and sour as husbands have." Lanier's father was also from Venice, so it may not be a coincidence that Othello is partly set in Venice. At number 4. Shakespeare cursed his own tombstone. Shakespeare was so adamant that his bones were left alone that he cursed his own tombstone for anyone who tried to move him. His tombstone reads, "Good friend for Jesus, sake forbear, to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed he be that moves my bones." Even in death, he was very elegant. 3. He caused an ecological disaster in New York. Shakespeare may be widely popular all over the world, but there was a time when the people of New York may have cursed his name. In 1890, a German-American named Eugene took the extraordinary step of importing 16 starlings from England to New York and a further 40 the following year. As an avid Shakespeare fan and a zoologist, it was Eugene's dream for America to be the home of each bird species featured in the works of the Bard. As well as the romance of bringing a little bit of England to New York, Eugene wanted to see if non-native species could thrive there, so he released the starlings into Central Park. Unfortunately for the American ecosystem, the starlings thrived a little too well and bred rapidly, outcompeting the local fauna for food and habitat. It is currently one of the only 3 birds in the US not afforded any state protection, the 2 other birds being the house sparrow and the pigeon, and is treated as a pest. Ironically, the starling only appears in one line in the whole of Shakespeare. In the play Henry IV, Part 1, Shakespeare fantasizes about using one of them to plague his enemy. 2. Shakespeare's children couldn't read or write. While Mr. Shakespeare himself went to Stratford's local grammar school, where he mastered the art of writing, reading, and even Latin, his wife and 2 children, who lived to adulthood, Susanna and Judith, are thought to have been illiterate. Although Susanna could scrawl her signature, which was a sign that she could at the very least do some very basic writing, traditionally those who couldn't write use a mark, which is what Shakespeare's wife and other child did. At number 1, the Globe. William was part of a theatre company called Lord Chamberlain's Men, who regularly performed at a place called The Theatre. But after a dispute with the landlord, they took the building apart, rebuilt it across the river, and named it the Globe. If you found that video interesting, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe.